and also doing 280 damage. Interested to see if the Radiant Gardevoir that we talked about earlier, if that maybe comes up, plays a role here, prevents the knockouts because it is it receives 20 less damage overall.
From Vs.
That should include VStars?
Yeah, it'll include VStars. So we see them warming up now. They got that active Pokemon ready to go. Going to be putting those prize cards down. And you see a lot of energy prized for Filippo from Italy there. Meanwhile, on Alex's side, Zigzagoon prize. That could be vital in a situation where a bit of damage modification is needed. But for the most part, I think these guys will be pretty comfortable that they've got a good deck list that won't get too damaged by those prizes right there.
Absolutely. I saw some discussions online going on how many grass energy you should be playing in the Giratina decks. And some opting for like 3, some for 4. Seeing like both have priced one, going for 4, having enough grass energy is definitely very beneficial. Yeah,
only 4 Psychic, pretty common because you need that Psychic for the Sableye. But having 2 of those prized, if an early lost, where we see the Comfey putting a card in the lost zone, that could be pretty detrimental for someone who's got a prized energy, because that's where you start making those decisions. So there's a Psychic and a Grass on the side of Alex, and if he starts chucking too many of those in the lost zone, might be needing that prize card later on.
Yeah, let's see if we see any...
Grass going in there straight away.
Absolutely, that's one of them. One is prized, so he has 2 left. We didn't see any deck search yet. There was a Colruyt experiment early on, getting access to 5 cards, now using the ability of Comfey to get access to more cards. But there's no deck search yet. There's no idea on what could be prized, what is in your deck. And this makes the decisions early on which cards to discard actually quite hard. But having 2 Comfeys, he was comfortable putting one of them in the lost zone.
Yeah, the flower selecting there coming through. The aim early on to try and get to that Mirage Gate levels within 2 turns, so that when you got the Giratina V-Star out, you'd be able to fully power it up. If you're going first like this, it's less relevant to get the 4 for something like a Cramorant. That's more of a going second kind of strategy. So right now, just trying to fill out that lost zone as much as possible. So when the powering up of the Giratina is needed, it's done as soon as possible. And this here seems to be a search for that Giratina needed.
Yeah, and playing 4 Battle VIPs pretty standard in this decks, but hitting them on turn 1 is amazing. You get 2 basic Pokemon on your bench, helps with your setup, and then the remaining cards you just have as fodder whenever you want to use the flower ability of Comfey.
Yeah, so we see a good setup starting here. Is that 4 in the lost zone, I believe, and I think the Comfey on the bench was put down after being scooped up, so potential for more, but might just hold.
There we go.
Going for another one.
Absolutely. That's a great way to chain those. Basically, pick the active one up, get the fresh one from the bench on, activate another ability, and then you still can draw back, retreat, and use the ability one more time. Lost Zone counter should currently be at 5, I suppose. Yep. And another retreat, another ability. The Lost Zone counter actually going up to 6 at this point, so very close to activating Mirror Gate as well.
Yeah, and we see that one of Thornton going into the Lost Zone. Can be used to power up a Giratina late in the game. If you've got only one on the bench, for example, it can be quite a useful way to guarantee a second one if it does get knocked out. And it can also be quite a nice way if you've got your Drapion down at the start or a Luminion down because you want to use it, then you can get those out of play by Thorntoning a Giratina from your discard pile into play. But in this matchup won't be available, well in this first game here, won't be available, and so we'll just look to play through the more traditional route. And knows that first turn is pretty safe as well, because no attack's likely to come out here from Filippo that can do any damage.
Yeah, this was actually Alex Schemanske. He was going second, so he was able to attack and do 110 damage on the Giratina.
So was it a pass?
There was the energy and pass, basically. That's what it looked like. We might have missed that early on.
Yeah, we missed that at the start. Apologies for that.
Yeah, there was 110 damage on it, and the Colruyt experiment also played an indicator for going second there that we missed. But now recovering from that poor start, you don't really want to see the attachment on the Giratina early on. It would probably be preferable to have that on the Arceus, for example. Was that active last turn, could have charged it up, then maybe evolve, use the ability, and go from there. Unfortunately, that was not available in this turn for Filippo. And I think Alex Schemanske, amazing first turn, getting his Lost Zone counter up to 6, being able to start dealing damage, 110, good on the board.
It makes a lot more sense now. That Cramorant, when it went down, I was thinking, hang on, is that a future plan? But it turns out we missed that the first turn was a attach pass on the side of Filippo. So Filippo not in the strongest spot right now because potentially behind on the race. That 110 damage from Cramorant could set up some numbers in the future, but for the most part, with the Giratina, he's just going to want to be hitting hard for big numbers later on. And the Arceus, double turbo energy on the Giratina is not where you want that. The Arceus is waiting to be powered up too.
Absolutely, and you can see that he's in a tricky position because this early on in the game he has to play down a Crobat. That's typically used for getting out of a tricky situation, which I suppose is now being in a tricky situation this early on in the match, having no energy on the Arceus, having to play down the Crobat to get more cards in your hand. Not the best situation, but that's what consistency is for. This is what more drawing cards is for, and maybe finds an out to potentially bring in a better position. There's the energy going on the Arceus, so he might be ready for next turn.
Yeah, the Crobat on the bench is not something you really want in this matchup at all because it's an easy knockout potentially for something like a Sableye after doing some damage. It works quite nicely with a double Greninja hit if that's a route they want to go down. So there are some clever ways around this matchup where you can start bringing your single prizes into it and focus more on that approach. And Crobat is an easier target as a V because it can't evolve. 180 is that perfect number for 120 or for 90 to work into. So that Crobat only ever really used in this match if you have to. And as we saw from that start, it definitely was a situation where it had to be used.
Yeah, and one of my favorite plays early on in the game is that Oranguru attack. Play it down and you can basically switch one card in your hand with the card on top of your deck. And this early on, the main hand disruption from either opponent could be a Mani.
Yeah.
But if you have the card that you need on top of your deck, you're basically guaranteed to draw it next turn.
Yeah, what an amazing ability that is. But you can see a Cramorant. What value from this Cramorant? Just getting the knockout on the Giratina, it was in the active spot. Didn't evolve it, so Giratina still low on the hit points. Meant that the 110 twice was enough to knock out a Giratina. And that, I think, is going to put Alex in such a strong spot here, almost so much so that it's going to be tough for Filippo to come back here.
Absolutely. He has the Arceus VStar now. One energy is already attached. We might see, I don't know if he has another energy in hand. It's a grass energy, but no double, but there's the Mani to potentially get more cards. And if Mani doesn't get you the card that you need, you still have a Oranguru. And on top of that, of course, a Starbirth.
Yeah, we've got the Starbirth, so there isn't going to be a miss of attack here, as there's always that option to find exactly what you need, which in this case is probably a double turbo energy, which one of them's prize, one's in the discard, but with the Starbirth, it doesn't matter where they are. They're in the deck, they'll be found. And that's the route now for Arceus. But Arceus wants to accelerate energy onto something. So that's right now what Filippo's thinking about. What do I put down to help with that acceleration?
Absolutely. There's a Quick Ball grabbing one Pokemon out of the deck. Let's see if he's going for another Arceus or if he's starting to build up his own Giratina.
Ooh, just priming that Radiant Gardevoir on top as an option. But I think maybe going for the Giratina. A lot to think about right now is when you're behind, you've got to start thinking, how can I get ahead? What do I need to do? And disruption is the main approach in the game right now. Try and make an opponent miss a turn. We've already seen the Mani this turn. And as you can see, the Giratina on the bench isn't powered up yet, isn't evolved. So there's still a lot for Alex to find to keep that rhythm up that he started so strongly with.
Yeah, we actually talked about this earlier today when I was like, hey, why do some Giratina players only play 2 Giratina V and 3 Giratina V-Star? We saw that one was already knocked out and was the second one prized. He wouldn't have access to it early on in this game anymore. Luckily enough, only one was knocked out, none was discarded, none are in the prizes. So the 2 worked out for him this time, but that can be a total different story in a different game. So really interesting to see that both players only play 2 Giratina V. But yeah, having that option now, maybe charging up the Giratina on the bench. All he needs is one more double turbo energy that he just has in his hand, and there we go.
And right now on the side of Alex, he's going to be thinking, how can I get that 2-2-2 finish? Already getting that first Giratina on track for it, and if they can't get that Giratina powered up to be able to knock out the Arceus, I mean, even though there's the big charm there, so there's going to have to start thinking about Lost Vacuum and all sorts of other connecting parts to make it work. You do have that Giratina on the bench, which could be an easier knockout, but there's also the potential for a Snorlax used to knock out the Crobat, which is, like we mentioned, Crobat is a vulnerable card to put down in this matchup. So I think we'll be seeing Filippo trying to get rid of that Crobat at some point if possible with the collapsed stadium. When you got 5 bench Pokemon, you play that Collapse Stadium, you can get rid of the Crobat. But right now, that Crobat is a vulnerable target for Alex to attack.
Absolutely. We see the energy attachments on the Giratina here, and Alex Schemanske hasn't promoted Pokemon yet. His Lost Zone counter currently at 6. With Comfy in play, he could have go it up to 7, maybe 8. If he finds a Colorless Experiment, that would be up to 10. Activates the Mirage Gate, but also the Star Requiem.
Yeah, because that Cramorant stayed in the active for 2 turns in a row and just announced the innocent spit. And so that was the advantage for him, that he didn't need to think too hard in that last turn. But now, as you mentioned, has to get those Lost Zone numbers up. Gets that first one to put it into range of Mirage Gate, and now he's going to be looking to get towards the 10 with that Chorus Experiment.
Exactly, and on top of that, he also has the Lost Vacuum, which not only gets more cards in his Lost Zone, but it also gets rid of the Big Charm, so he doesn't even have to use Star Requiem. He can just attack with his Giratina VStar, which, to be fair, he hasn't played just yet, so he needs to find that tool as well. But he can charge it up with the Merge Gate that he also has. Like, he has all the tools, you just need to play it in the right way.
Yeah, so many options right here, and choosing the route based off of what you draw is the key with these kinds of decks, and as you can see, making long, thoughtful decisions, making sure not to get rid of it the wrong thing, going for the Lost Vacuum into the Lost Zone, so choosing to go through a different route. And we can fully trust Alex here. He must have a great knowledge of this deck, and there's so many options right here. And that is a escape rope there.
That's interesting for sure. I don't know if he has another option to maybe gust something up, or he's comfortable taking a 1-prizer. But yeah, there's definitely the second Comfy coming off here, increasing the Lost Zone counter even further. We're currently at 9. That's the 10th we needed, and we're currently set up. There's another Merge Gate and an Escape Rope. Pretty good cards for Alex Schemanske right now.
Yeah, there was still a lot to get to knock out that Arceus in the active, wasn't there? We needed the evolution, needed some energy, and all of those options were quite tricky to get a hold of. And then if you wanted to go for a knockout just using the attack of the Giratina VStar and doing a Lost Impact, that would have needed to get rid of the Big Charm. If you want to go down the Star Requiem route, that would have required giving up one of your potential ending of the game tactics. You know, it's always good to hold that Star Requiem as your final knockout, just in case your opponent puts something big like an Arceus with a big charm on it.
Yeah, and there's the evolution. There is the second energy required for the V-Star power. And we see even the Mirage Gate as well, charging up another attacker. That's maybe the Snorlax that you brought in earlier. So I'm really interested to see how that turns out. 2 energies going on. Let's see. That might very well be the Snorlax, because with their V-Star power, there might be a knockout regardless of the Big Charm.
Yeah, that's a threat there to the Crobat on the bench. And as we mentioned, there is a way for the Crobat to be removed by Filippo with the Collapse Stadium. But right now we're looking at that Arceus in the active, and the Star Requiem is an option to knock that out. And then the Snorlax on the bench as an option to get the Crobat. Or even, you know, if they can't get the knockout, it's still a lot of damage. 180 damage is a lot. And there we see the V-Star marker flipped over. Star Requiem going to get the knockout. 2 prizes remaining for Alex, and a lot still to do for Filippo.
Absolutely, and that's exactly what I want to see. The sheer power of Giratina. Just basically deciding, hey, flipping over my V-Star power and 1 knockout done.
You're a big Giratina fan.
Absolutely,
I can tell.
absolutely. And he still has the power to like do 280 damage in the following turns. He just needs 1 more energy. It seemed so easy, so effortless how he charged up this Giratina. He had it ready when he needed it. 1 energy was there. He only needed the psychic energy. Like it seemed very effortless. Like, well done, Alex.
Yeah, and that seems to be a scoop there from Filippo, recognizing he's too far behind. And that's
the main pieces of Arceus, really. And we see he has all pieces he needs. There are the energies required, Arceus in the start, and Hisuian Heavy Ball to check your prizes on top of that. That's a very good start for Filippo.
Yeah, we all love a heavy ball in the first turn. Not so much about taking the Pokemon out of the prizes, but more it saves you having to do that flick through your deck and work out what is prize. You can just know it from the off, and does get the Luminion out of it. But on the other side, Luminion not in the best position. The effect of Luminion, the luminous sign, is only used when put into play. So if you start with it, you miss out on the full utility of it. And as we mentioned, there's Pokemon like Arceus that really need those low HP Vs to be able to get the knockouts.
Absolutely. Arceus will love that Luminion, definitely. Like, a very strong ability. players tend to play one-offs, try to have their quick balls or ultra balls, pick that up, and whenever you need that one specific supporter, Luminion will help you. But starting with that is definitely not a good choice. You can't use Scoop Up Net to get rid of it either, so it's a very unfortunate situation for Alex in this game too.
And we've seen a bit so far today, when a player goes ahead game 1, if they have a rough game 2, you always have that ability just to scoop and focus on game 3. So Alex, even though this isn't a great start, doing it on game 2 in a best of 3 is the best place to do it, where you haven't got the choice of who goes first or second, and when you can just scoop and go game 3.
Absolutely. Filippo, very convenient hand there, has every tools he needs to go for that strong turn 2. That's really interesting to see. However, Alex Schemanske is first deck search, gets the Radiant Greninja out. If he has an energy in hand, he can get 2 more cards, and that's exactly what he is going to do. Activate the ability, discard 1 energy to draw 2 more cards, get a little bit more cards in your hand, get a better overview as a water energy. But like, looking at his field right now, he's playing Giratina V with a Lost Box, and he has Radiant Greninja and Luminion on the active. Neither of these Pokemon is what you really want to start off, but there we go. That's a Battle VIP pass. 1 Comfy already on the field, getting a Giratina, maybe a second Comfy. There's actually the Cramorant, but because he hasn't used any Colorless Experiment or Comfy yet, the Lost Zone counter is at 0.
Okay, well, we're seeing the bench fill up, but unfortunately that Luminion is still in the active, and there is still nothing in the Lost Zone yet. So Alex has got a lot to do to start getting back into this, and you know, he can still just sit here and hope that Filippo doesn't have the hand that we know he's got here. You know, seeing a touch pass, well, he did the heavy ball as well, but pretty much as good as a touch pass. That's the kind of place where we often see early game wins, is when a player doesn't put much on the bench. But you know, he knows he's got the Luminion from the heavy ball, so he knows there are options for him to get out of this. So he's aware that it's not just going to be a free win here. He has to work for it. So doing everything he can in that first turn to set up for future turns, knowing that this Arceus attack could very well be happening.
Yeah, I think in the first game the Collapse Stadium was actually priced, and we haven't seen it come in play. But you mentioned a great play of getting rid of that Crobat from your bench. The same obviously applies to Luminion as well. If either of these players decides to play down the stadium, they could free up more space. And then maybe afterwards, with a Lost Vacuum, they could get rid of that stadium and free up more space on the bench again, fill that maybe with other Pokemon they have. There's the Ultra Ball required to get the Arceus, and typically you would say, yeah, Attach Pass, not the strongest turn. However, if it's an Arceus that has an energy and is able to evolve next turn, that's actually a great turn.
That's a dream turn, right?
Absolutely.
Arceus down with an energy on and ways to get that V-Star. That's all you want to look for, and once you get that Starbirth off, you're in business. And we do have 2 V-Stars available for the Arceus Giratina. You're just never going to get a chance to use that Star Requiem on Giratina V-Star, just because you're never getting enough in the Lost Zone. But for Arceus, it does add for that consistency, and this is where Arceus Giratina starts to set that pace. I'm going to start taking knockouts. Now it's up to you to come back and start knocking out my large Pokemon.
Interesting choice here that he discarded the Marnie with the Quick Ball, so I'm interested to see if he has another supporter.
Yes,
he has
another Marnie. Another Marnie.
Okay. Like, I was interested which supporter choice, or if he's going for that Starbirth, but however, if you have the option to use the supporter first, that's probably always the better option. So there's the Marnie, 5 fresh cards. He's still looking for that double turbo energy though, which he doesn't have right now. So it's the last chance, of course, is to use that Starbirth ability. However, using all your options beforehand is great. Technically, I think I saw an Ultra Ball, but he doesn't want to go for any Crobat routes and then hope to get the energy. He's making sure he has what he needs, and then because Giratina is already on the bench, he can charge that up as well with that attack.
Can we just take a moment to appreciate Filippo's V-Star marker there? We do see a variety of V-Star markers from these players. The sealed V-Star card, the graded card from Alex there, and then on Filippo's side, a surprise Pikachu looking to be flipped over. But of course, we do have the deck search now for the Starbirth. Any 2 cards of your choice, an incredibly powerful ability. It does mean that you don't have the outs later on if you're in a pickle. You might want to keep it just in case you get Marnied or Roxanne in other matchups.
I mean, before V-Star abilities were introduced, abilities that you can only use once a game, telling someone, hey, there's an ability and you can get any 2 cards out of your deck, that seems ridiculous. That's super strong. Obviously limited by once per game, but still, if you get that setup, you always get to attack. It's just very powerful, and it's a good reason why Arceus is at the top.
Yeah, ever since Brilliant Stars came out, Arceus has been at the top. In some way, obviously the World Champions deck had Arceus in it, and a lot of options are available. There's a lot of things that are a bit clunky to do in Pokemon if you're just drawing for it, but with Arceus it does allow you to play for those clunkier strategies because you can just search for exactly what you need. And we're getting that first prize taken there by Filippo. Of course, the energy going down before you take the prize card. We saw it earlier on. It can affect your decision if you know what you take from the prizes. So energy first, and that Giratina is now primed, ready on the bench to evolve and attack.
And it looks like he has the Ultra Ball in hand as well, so you can technically evolve that soon. But for now, like Arceus with the 200 damage is like enough to attack and take out all these single prizes. And you see how much of a difference it makes if you don't have that free early knockout with a double crammer and attack into the Giratina. So now I'm really interested to see, now that Filippo is in the driving seat, taking the first knockout, having a like pretty comfortable setup. I'm interested to see how Alex can maybe turn the tide and come back, or like make a foot into this game.
Okay, so making the decision now from Alex around what he's going to be putting in the Lost Zone. I did see a VIP pass in there, and I think I would assume that 3 was not the 3 to take. At first I looked and went, hang on a minute, why are you taking a VIP pass? But he was deciding which of those 3 he would be putting in the Lost Zone. And so now we see the Lost Zone is starting to build up, but we're still not in range of that Mirage Gate, which is the key number 7. We need to see 7 cards in the Lost Zone to start taking effect on that energy acceleration. And this is where you start to ask those questions. Is it worth carrying on right now? And he's going to keep trying out this turn, just to try and work out if there's a way back into it. But now that Arceus Giratina's got that start, they're just going to keep announcing attacks until the end of the game. Yeah,
and seeing that, like, if you fail on early on increasing your loss on counter, you not only don't have the marriage count, you also don't have the option of Star Requiem either. So that Arceus currently is very comfortable in the active position for Filippo. It's really like the maximum. It seems like it's 110 to do, and that's not even a two-hit knockout. So yeah, Alex didn't attach to the Giratina either, from what I see. So like he's currently like playing very passively, you could think, spreading some damage, and maybe finding a different path into this game.
Yeah, well, even attaching for the Star Requiem, the Lost Zone would be the factor there, getting up to that number 10. Such a hard number to get to if you're struggling to get stuff in the Lost Zone early on. Mirage Gate, much more realistic approach here. Next turn to get those 7 in. The 110 damage on the Radiant Gardevoir, that's key to get rid of that, because that will help with the numbers later on. You know, any damage reduction we see will affect the ability of Giratina to knock out using that 280 damage. So 20 off of that, 260, you start thinking, ooh, chuck a Choice Belt in there, but then the opponent can chuck a Big Charm on, and we start getting that who's going to outbulk the other attack. And so right now, Arceus Giratina has the potential to avoid being one-hit knockout just through the Gardevoir and Big Charm potential.
Absolutely, and because the loss on counter is so low, Sableye is also not an option anytime soon. We only see one Comfy in play. Could have been knocked out here as well, but that's not the choice. Instead, Giratina without energy is in the active now, and if you start dealing some damage to that, that's not a great Pokemon to have in the active either. So if he has a way to retreat that the Gardevoir and then attack with the Arceus, it's another 200 damage and one step closer to taking 2 more prize cards.
Yeah, we mentioned the Gardevoir would do enough damage reduction that the Big Charm would put it out of range. It would also put the Arceus there with the Tool Jammer out of range, because a Choice Belt would be needed to knock out there too. So both that Arceus and the Giratina, if they remain with their tools attached and that Gardevoir stays alive on the bench, then we're going to be looking to see an impossible knockout for both those, unless they go to the Star Requiem, which is so out of range. So a lot for Alex to do here. Filippo is setting up a great board state to just keep playing the way he is to end this game, but right now just needs to find a way to get that Gardevoir out the active.
Yeah, we see actually 2 balls played. First there was the Quick Ball, getting the Oranguru, and then there's an Ultra Ball, discarding a Boss and a Psychic Energy to get a Crobat here. So he's definitely going for the drawing options. He also has his Bibarel active, or like has it ready for, or already used ability there. So we see the Oranguru, and we see the Crobat picking up fresh 6 cards.
Yeah, we've mentioned Crobat in this matchup and how important it is to not bench it where you can. But on this occasion, the tempo of prize takes from Filippo means that the Crobat is worth it at this stage. It's much more important right now he gets the Giratina knockout than it is that Crobat's on the bench. But based off the way he's looking at his cards right now, it doesn't seem like he's got the switch out that he was looking for. The escape rope is prized, and so we need 2 energy attached to the Guard of War to be able to retreat it. And so
is that a double turbo energy in his hand that I saw there, the second card? So that might be one option potentially. I'm not sure if he had an attachment for turn already, but I think it was Arceus was already loaded up and he used Trinity Charge to get the energies on Giratina. So I don't see any other energy, so that would be one potential way. Collect Stadium to get rid of the
there we
Crobat.
go. This is a beautiful turn right here. And like you said, that double turbo retreat, such good play here. Recognizing the Crobat was worth it because the Collapse Stadium option would be in the future. Looking for that retreating option, having the energy as an option. The escape rope was not an option there. So much thought going into that turn and thinning of the hand before using the Crobat to reach as deep as possible.
Yeah, and sometimes like these cards are like from different sets, like Arceus and Giratina, but it almost looks like these cards were made for each other because you start on early on with a game, attach maybe a single basic energy, then get your double turbo energy, and then once Giratina is ready to attack, you can just discard your double turbo energy as 2 energies, and that seems like a very natural setup. Like you need that at the first step, and then it's ready to be discarded afterwards.
Yeah, Lost Impact. Any Pokemon's energy can be put into the Lost Zone thanks to it. And as you see there, that Lost Zone counter going up for Filippo. But I don't think we're going to be hitting the big number of 10 anytime soon for Star Requiem. And it doesn't even matter once Starburst's been used. That's the only real way to get stuff into the Lost Zone for that deck. Another option that we haven't spoken about much here for Filippo is that Sharon's Care. That could potentially come in and act as a reset if an Arceus survives a hit. There might be a way for them to reset that damage and go again, which we've seen a lot of this now, is the surviving hits, resetting with Sharon's Care, or in Cheryl has been used I think in Singapore, or it might have been Malaysia recently. It allows for those resets of damage on the Pokemon, which is so key with the changing the pace of the game and making sure you stay alive. Speaking of which...
Exactly what we talked about. So it's a bit unfortunate. Cramorant only dealing 110 damage and the Bibarel having 120 damage surviving. Initially that looked like a good setup for maybe later on the game, bringing your Sableye, dealing 10 damage here, picking up that KO, 10 damage there on the Gardevoir, taking that knockout as well. But now, thanks to, you said it, Sharon's Care, picking up a colorless Pokemon with damage cards on it, and just, fresh, no damage, and...
It acted as a retreat there, basically.
On top of that.
Yeah, so wonderful synergy there. And this is where these players, they don't know what those one-off cards are going to be in their opposition's deck. And so Sharon's Care as an option is not always played in this deck. It's starting to get more popular now, but it's not always going to be there. And it really helps in the Lost Box matchup when you're playing against a single-prize deck. And that's the main reason why it gets included. But it allows you against Lost Engine decks with your Cramorant, and against like the Reggies, for example, to be able to reset that damage. So a wonderful include in the deck list there for Filippo, and he's going to be looking to punish now off of that retreating through Sharon's Care.
Absolutely. One thing you mentioned in going into the second game was that if it's not going in your favor and you're already 1-0 up, like you can forfeit and go into game 3. Alex, however, decided all the way through to play through this game, even though he had a maybe poor start.
He's tried his best.
He's tried, absolutely, but the question eventually is, will he be able to finish a potential game 3? The clock is at 20 minutes. We saw that it was actually quite hard to finish game 3 in under 20 minutes. So I'm surprised to see Alex playing this out, and maybe I'm trusting him that he sees a path into winning this game, sees potential to come back here. But yeah, it's going to be really hard because at this point Filippo is down to 2 prize cards.
Yeah, and we've just got to trust in Alex that he sees a route to victory here, because time is a factor in these Swiss rounds when you've got to play out 3 games, and especially when you win that first game and if things aren't going right in the second game. We saw Joe Bernard earlier doing it, scooping almost instantly in game 2 when things went wrong, and it opened up and allowed game 3 to have a result. Unfortunately, he did end up losing, which is sometimes maybe right now Alex is thinking, do you know what, I'm going to give this my best shot, and the worst case scenario is we end with a draw, right? You're going to try your best in a game. And that's also something these players got to think about is one draw is not a bad thing in a Swiss, because it does get you closer to that, that 19-point mark. So playing for the win now does make sense. knowing that it's not the worst case scenario.
Absolutely. It also, like, I'm sure Alex has an idea of how good his matchup is in this particular matchup here, and maybe trying to win the second game, and then not having the, like, let's pretend you have a very bad matchup, right? If you scoop up early in game 3, you also give your opponent the option to finish up early on and win that game 3, which might not be the case if you drag out game 2 and try to win that game as well.
Exactly. See Snorlax in play now, so the Thornton used to bring, I think that was Cramorant back in place of that Luminion, takes away the 2-prizer, and makes it more of a 1-prize game plan, which is more similar to that of the Lost Box. And so you see now Alex is just looking to play out the rest of this turn. You mentioned about the playing it out and trying your best, and if you go to that game 3, you do get to go first. So that does give you a bit of an advantage if you want to go first and play out that game plan. But these guys are on this table because they've done so well. 4-0 right now. They are looking to punish their opposition for any mistakes that might happen, any miscalculations. And thankfully for Filippo, he's found every out of one of those situations every time Alex tries causing some disruption.
Absolutely. But I see the Giratina ready to attack with one more energy, basically. The Arceus has 1 energy, so it's 1 double turbo away from attacking as well. So if Alex somehow finds a way to maybe take a knockout and have the remaining Pokemon not be able to attack through missing energies, there will be one option. However, Filippo, did he just gust? Oh no, that was the escape rope. Yeah, there we go. Hasn't promoted himself yet. Has the Arceus. I assume he has access to another attack. Energy to actually attack. It looks like a tool jammer and 1 single psychic energy there. But even if not, he can stall 1 more turn basically, because Alex, with still 6 prize cards remaining, is so far away from winning this game that Filippo can afford to have extra turns if he's not able to attack here.
Yeah, you bring up a good point there. Lost Impact is slowly removing energy from the game on your side, and it's energy you can't get back. So you do have to be careful resource managing that energy. Especially if you say had prize some, if you discarded some early when you need to draw. So definitely something Filippo's going to be thinking about. And right now that Arceus does need a double turbo to be able to attack this turn. Otherwise,
I don't see in his hand actually.
No, otherwise we're going to maybe see a retreating option to get into the Giratina.
His deck is also very thin at this point. Looks like less than 10 cards.
There's 2 DTs in there. So really hoping to get through to one of those with some draw.
I think if you discard more cards from your hand and then maybe use Bibara's ability, that you have a very high odds to actually get one of these 2 cards. So yeah, discarding these, getting the Arceus. I think he had another Quick Ball in hand to get another card out. He's currently counting how many he would have to thin out of his deck to then increase his odds even further to get the energy. So there's another Quick Ball. Keep in mind he can only draw up to 5 cards, so he has to get below 5 as well. Is that also an Ultra Ball in his hand to further...
Potentially in there, yes. An Ultra Ball in there, discarding those 2 cards.
It seems like he's... is he potentially failing the Quick Ball and then using the Ultra Ball for 2 more cards?
Potentially. Well, we'll see what happens here shortly. And as we mentioned, time is important right now because that 3rd game could be a little bit rushy. Yeah, the Ultra Ball for 2 cards, is that? So the Quick Ball did 1 card, Ultra Ball for 2 cards. Going to get a chance to look through. At the end of the day is just trying to, well, it's going to thin out the Arceus maybe?
Yeah.
No, I mean, if the Bibarel's just going to draw, we may as well increase odds by not thinning it out.
So he was basically playing down the Quick Ball, discarding the Arceus, failing the search, then playing his Ultra Ball, discarding 2 more cards, getting the Arceus VStar out of the deck. So
did that Arceus go down this turn? I can't remember. If that Arceus V, then they can evolve and that will thin out a bit. But yeah, trying to get everything as thin as possible to get the double turbo energy out. And
so he has 5 cards remaining. 2 of them are energies that he needs, and it seems like he has 1 card left in hand, so he's picking up 4, which will
guarantee
the energy attachment. But he's down to 1 single card in his deck.
Well, that's you got to be careful now because there is a world where the single card there could be drawn, but there's no Marnie on the side of Alex. So there's no option to Marnie his cards up to a certain point where he can deck out. But he does need 1 more turn to knock out, right?
So basically, yeah, the thing is, Filippo with his next attack, the 3 Pokemon remaining on Alex's side will all be knocked out. So if he somehow has a way to play down a Pokemon that would survive, like Giratina, for example, survive one attack of that Arceus, and Arceus doesn't have a way to retreat. However, he can just pay the retreat cost and retreat to the Giratina in the back, which has enough energy to attack as well, or like has enough attacking power basically to knock that out.
I think he's got a boss as well, maybe. There's so many ways he can finish this out here. So from our point of view, it looks like Filippo's guaranteed this, and it's looked like it's been in his favour for a while now. But Alex just wants to see if there's any way, and this is what we're talking about, mistakes can happen. And from Alex's point of view, he's looking at that single card in the deck and thinking, well, maybe they haven't managed their resources correctly, and I might be able to find a way to steal this win here. And he's going to put that energy on the Snorlax, and what do we think at this final moment here Alex is thinking to try and do?
I think, from my understanding, he's trying to prevent the knockout from Filippo, because Filippo will draw his last card. If he can't knock out one of Alex's Pokemon, Alex just passes the turn and Filippo loses because he can't draw any card. So somehow he has to prevent the knockout from happening. He's taken the knockout actually on the Gardevoir for 2 Zigzagoon pings through the net. However, he still needs to find a way to prevent the knockout from Filippo. Filippo is basically there, well, I'm ready to attack, ready to take out the final knockout. What do you have to offer?
Bossing up a barrel?
Boss
okay. Do you have a way of retreating that? We know there's a double turbo energy in there, but from Alex's point of view...
yeah, and he basically showed the switching card and showed, hey, I have all the tools I need. There's one more card, I don't even need to draw it. And he's tired.
Make it awkward. And then Filippo found the options out. That Sharon's Care turn was vital, because that could have kept him stalled for a while and given those 3 lost tools like the Cramorant and the Sableye ability to take turns and bring back the game. But we are going to be going now into Game 3. This is about 12 minutes left, 11 minutes.
Yeah, and it's Alex Schemanske like first deck search here with the VIP pass, obviously perfect in turn 1. He shook his head. I'm wondering if he's maybe upset about the double call risk experiment and the prizes, so less likely to draw into one of these.
We know he's only got 1 Tina as well. Giratina's in there.
Yep, that's also true. Having the Greninja early on, discarding energy, and drawing 2 more cards, and then starting off with a Comfy Chain. There's the Scoop Up Net, another Comfy on the bench, and that's good. That's what he was missing in the last game, was like the lost counter early on.
And we see Alex sort of accelerating his speed of play here, which we mentioned about the ability to scoop last game, and he backed the win in that game and is now trying to play for the win in this one. A solid start, putting stuff in the lost zone on your first turn is always key. And he just wants to find a way to get that Giratina down, which is probably the thing he's most frustrated at, finding out one of them was in the prizes so that he can't find his way out. Lots of outs to hitting it in the prizes. And in this kind of speed play game where you're trying to get that result, having as many outs early on to get the early success is key.
Yeah, and looking at the hand, like I see in Heavy Ball and in Arceus in the prizes, that's a very comfortable start. There's a double turbo energy in his hand as well. So Filippo has the tools to start off right here. Maybe even like withdraw or like retreat the active Giratina and use Trinity Charge to get more energies out. Not dealing damage, but having the energies is great. However, he's like, well, I don't need the double turbo energy. Let me get a quick ball in play and discard that, actually.
Well, he's got the capture in hand, the one-off capture, a card that sometimes gets played in this deck, and I think there's lots of people advocating for it. It does help with that consistency early on, and the way he's filtered it into the deck hasn't been at the expense of a grass energy. He's still got the 4 grass, 4 psychic, 1 capture. So right now he'll be searching through his deck and thinking, with that Hisuian Heavy Ball, what could I potentially get? And then that will change his decision as to what he goes for with the quick ball here. Yeah,
it's interesting. Like, I'm not too sure. I mean, these plays probably best, but I feel like wouldn't an Hisuian Heavy Ball be a great way to check your prizes, and then also make it easier to pick a target with that quick ball? That's one question that goes through my mind.
I guess the order of operation he's gone through here is I'll check my deck first, and if there is nothing in the prizes like an Hisuian Heavy Ball, he can use that for discard with, say, a quick ball or an ultra ball in the future. Right now, like you said, the Hisuian Heavy Ball would have been a great start to get the Arceus out, and right now has all of those Pokemon at the front of his deck in the way he does his deck search. We'll need a good shuffle afterwards to make sure they all get mixed up.
My understanding is he's actually shuffling through. You talked about the capture energy, so I thought he brought up the basic Pokemon. to then pick up another basic Pokemon afterwards. But now there's Asian Heavy Ball picking one out of the prizes. There's the Arceus. He also sees that there's another double Turbo Energy and a Psychic Energy in the prizes. It's good to know, but he was just going for the deck storage. So it's just confirmation at this point on what is priced and what is available in the deck.
So now we are seeing that first turn that you want with your Arceus is to have an Arceus on board, a Giratina on board, so you can evolve them in your second turn. You need to get that turn attachment out, and we see the Radiant Gardevoir acting as a bit of extra support, bit of damage reduction for those two Pokemon. Putting the Bidoof down for the draw later on with the Bibarel.
Yep.
So everything kind of coming together now, and from that, the most important thing is getting that turn attack next turn with the Arceus.
Absolutely. Capgenji, great to get another basic on the board for more consistency. We talked about the Bidoof. People were aligned that they played the 1-1, getting that out, having the Radiant Gardevoir as well to reduce damage from Alex Schemanske's Giratina if he chooses to play that later on in the game. Yeah, with a single energy attachment, he can't use Trinity Charge, I suppose, or Trinity Nova more so. But yeah, he's passing, he's happy with his board state, and if he gets the Arceus VStar next turn, he's in a great spot.
So instantly in with the Flower selecting, Cramorant into the Lost Zone, already one on the bench, no need to have multiple of those in this game. And we didn't see the Giratina played down last time. As we mentioned, it's one in the prizes, there's only one other in the deck, two in the deck in total. So a challenging find to find naturally. But there is potential for that Thornton route using whatever's on the bench already to get the Giratina out. Already have that turn in play, so the evolution into the V-Star is possible this turn.
Absolutely. Closed Experiment, bringing a Lost Zone counter up to 6. Great benchmark here. Retreating, thanks to that, is Scoop Up Net and using another ability there. Counter should be up to 7 at this point, which is another benchmark. And but I don't see any Giratina in play yet. There's a Mirage Gate, would be ready. There's the Snorlax. We've seen Snorlax in 2 games now. 2 energies attached last time, but it didn't actually attack at any point. Interested to see that he keeps playing this down, maybe just as a threat to making sure, like, hey, I have another 180 damage Pokemon there. Actually charges that up. Very interesting choice. But yeah, interested to see that there's nothing else happening here. Judges are checking the Lost Zone counter to make sure that there was actually 7. And confirmed by the judges, no disagreement there. Energies attached and...
Yeah, I mean, that Snorlax is a massive threat to the idea of using a Crobat or a Luminion. So Luminion's in the prizes, so we're not going to see that for a little while anyway. But to then have that Crobat not want to be benched unless you can instantly get rid of it with the Collapsed Stadium, it takes away options. So Snorlax has been an amazing threat in Lost Zone decks, just due to that energy acceleration through Mirage Gate. And it seems right now like Alex is going for the one prize strategy here, looking to play a little bit more conservative, not giving away free prizes, and then has that ability to Thornton later on for a sudden burst of damage with the Giratina V-Star. Currently, keeping it safe, Cramorant only, maybe look to get some damage in with the Sableye or the Snorlax later on.
Absolutely. There's the Ultra Ball getting the missing piece, the Arceus V-Star. However, we're down to 5 minutes and neither of these players have taken any prize cards in this game 3. So a lot of Pokemon to be knocked out for victory here. And maybe that's exactly what Alex Schemanske was thinking. Hey, this might not be a comfortable matchup. This might not be an advantage or like a positive matchup here. So I will definitely play out my second game, maybe win that. And if not, well, try to beat 6 of my single prize Pokemon and take game 3. Let me see that, Filippo.
Yeah, I've played this matchup a few times, and when on the Arceus Giratina side, the moment you see them start playing one prizes and consistently getting damage on the board, it does get quite scary, especially with that Snorlax. The trades are quite nice with it. And then, like we said, at that final moment, you can just come in and Star Requiem to finish off the game. Kind of similar to how Charizard does in the Lost Box.
Yep.
So that game plan is always an option there for Alex, and especially prizing the Giratina earlier on. He probably thought committing to a single prize approach would be better, and that's what we're seeing here. And it's a lot safer as well in a game 3 when time might be a factor, so you can sort of guarantee the draw.
Yep, and there's the Starbirth getting 2 cards that he wanted. There's the Retreat with the Escape Rope, getting Arceus active. He has the energies he needs to actually attack and charge up. There's another Money to disrupt the hand of Alex a little bit. He will be able to charge up his Giratina, maybe even evolve it if he draws into that. And Filippo has a pretty decent setup, but I don't really see him taking 6 knockouts in the remaining 3 minutes.
Exactly, and this is one of those games where the speed of play right now might sneak an extra turn in, and that could be vital. But both players have played pretty solidly in all 3 games. They've played their game plan well. They've tried disrupting. They've tried gaining back turns. And at the end of the day, the one with the most powered up Pokemon early, starts knocking out early, has taken the victory. So right here, first announced attack. We're going to see energy attached through Arceus here. Arceus not only consistent for the Star Birth and able to search for anything in your deck, but thinning out energy with Trinity Nova helps thin out that deck and start setting up your future attackers if the Arceus gets knocked out.
Absolutely, absolutely. First knockout, first prize taken. Actually, not yet, but will be taken in a second. And Alex, further on, continues with his Comfy, maybe bringing up his Lost Encounter to 10. We haven't really seen Sableye come into play yet from Alex. Maybe that's an option to start spreading some damage. But again, like, it's interesting. Both these players looking at tying this round, but so far they've both been able to win all their games. So a question you have to ask yourself is your deck able to win 2 games in 50 minutes?
Yeah.
And it might not be the case in this particular round, but both players have achieved that 4 times in a row now, being 4-0. So that's definitely one option to look into. Is, for example, for Gudriz, if your deck is too defensive, might not be KO'd, but if you also don't take the knockouts early on or soonish enough, then you might be stuck and not win those games in time.
And there's some decks that are reserved for experienced players only in that sense. You know, the Lost Box. We all saw Tord smash it in America with his version of the Lost Box. So many decisions have to be made, so much card shuffling and movement has to be done. So if you're very familiar with movement of cards, making decisions quickly, you're much more likely to be able to finish those games. And especially when you go onto the feature table like this, you do think a little bit more carefully. You want to make sure you thoroughly go through all your decisions, so it can slow down the play a little bit. So that's why we see some of these games go a little bit slower at times, because you just don't want to mess up that decision when there's a bit more pressure on.
Absolutely, and I'm wondering what's going through the head of both these players. Alex Schemanske, another ability used, 2 more cards to be looked at. Comfy won't be needed here. Keeps his Ordinary Rod, if that's correctly. And there's a Scoop Up Net going for 110 damage, but missing the KO once again. Actually, beforehand, there's the Scoop Up Net, or was it? No, it was the boss actually, and knocking out the Giratina. I spoke too soon.
Yeah, 110 and 110 from the Cramorant. We saw that earlier on against Giratina. Perfect numbers there to get the knockout. It's a good trade as well. 1 single prize Pokemon with no energy for a Pokemon V which can evolve. Catch it before it evolves and you're in a good spot. But there is the other one which got powered up with energy. You know, Filippo recognizing that the 110 damage on that Giratina was vulnerable, so willing to sacrifice it into the discard pile, knowing that the other one would be available to power up fully, and that's the one that's been promoted here. So the prizes now, we're coming up to the end of time here. 4 prizes on the side of Alex left to take, and then 5 for Filippo.
Yeah, like actually maybe we spoke too soon. Okay, Giratina gets active and might be knocked out here, but if Alex is basically 2 KOs away from winning this game. So he has the opposing Giratina and the opposing Arceus VStar, both 2 prizers, so if he takes both of them out, he would win the game. And we're about heading into time, but he definitely has 2 more turns. And if he can't make the maximum out of these 2 turns, taking 2 knockouts, maybe somehow bring another Giratina into play, actually won't be able to evolve that in the same turn as well. So he's missing that. By being able to guss up the existing Giratina on the bench and knocking that out, Filippo is in a very commanding position to at least not lose the game.
Exactly. So this could be a bit too much to ask for both players here with the amount of time left on the round. Both played admirably and have played efficiently and tried disrupting, which we said is a key factor. Even just in that last turn, we saw disruption happening by going for getting the Giratina up into the active, hitting it with the Cramorant. Just asked for a lot more stuff to get the Pokemon out of the active. You know, we see switch cards, we see escape ropes, we see manual attachments. All of those are questions that you want to try and take away as many of those options. You know, a lot of these decks are only playing 1 or 2 switch outs. You know, 1 switch, 1 escape rope is quite common. And then you start asking them to attach for turn to retreat, and like the Sharon's Care is a supporter for turn. So the way Alex has played has been very good to disrupt players and stop them from taking the win.
And talking about disruption, Roxanne coming in this late in the game, obviously also very great disruption, bringing Filippo down to 2 cards, making it even harder for him. But at the same time, like, until we hear otherwise, we have to assume that the game is still going on and the extra turns haven't started yet. We had some dice indication earlier in the earlier rounds. We don't exactly know how far we are into extra rounds and into extra time, but there's a third energy, and maybe we actually see the Snorlax attacking for the first time in the set.
Yeah, with that Snorlax, once it attacks, it falls asleep, but it won't be on this occasion. Cramorant goes into the active, attacks the Giratina. And I think Filippo right now working out the turns, and I think they both agreed there's no way either of them's going to win. So we're going to get a draw here between Alex and Filippo, and so the rightful result of